On Friday, April 25, 1986, Pripyat was a city basking in the gentle warmth of a perfect spring day. It was a model Soviet city, a place built for the best and brightest. Young families pushed strollers along wide, clean avenues lined with blossoming trees. Children's laughter echoed from playgrounds and schoolyards. Pripyat was a testament to the power of the atom, a utopia built in the shadow of the Vladimir Ilyich Lenin nuclear power plant. The plant was the city's heart, pumping life and electricity into the Soviet grid. Its workers were the city's proud backbone. This sense of security rested on Soviet pride and technological optimism. The RBMK 1000 reactor was hailed as a marvel, powerful, efficient, and, designers claimed, inherently safe. People had no reason to doubt it. Inside the plant, preparations were underway for a routine safety test. The night shift began their work under a cloud of confusion. The safety test was designed to see if the plant's turbines could power its own cooling systems during a blackout. The test had been poorly planned and communicated, instructions were unclear, vital information had been omitted from the logbooks. The night crew, less experienced and less familiar with the protocols, were stepping into conditions the day team might have handled differently. As they reduced power for the test, a sudden, unexpected drop occurred. The reactor's output plummeted to a mere 30 megawatts, a state known as reactor poisoning, where xenon-135 absorbs neutrons and stifles the chain reaction. According to the safety manual, a poisoned reactor should have been shut down immediately. But Anatoly Dyatlov, the deputy chief engineer, was determined to see the test through. He bullied the younger operators into overriding protocols and ordered them to raise the power by withdrawing the control rods from the core. Control rods are the reactor's brakes, made of boron carbide. Pulling them out was like taking the brakes off a speeding car. With nearly all rods withdrawn, the reactor became extremely unstable, like a wild animal barely held on a leash. Instruments gave confusing readings, the operators were flying blind. At 1:23 a.m. on April 26, the test officially began. The nuclear chain reaction accelerated, instruments conflicted and alarms blared. Akimov pressed the emergency AZ-5 shutdown, the ultimate failsafe that should have saved them. But RBMK control rods had graphite tips. As the rods descended, graphite entered the core first, displacing cooling water and causing one final massive power surge. In less than a second, the reactor's power output skyrocketed to over 100 times normal. The system could not bear the stress. Two massive explosions tore Reactor 4 apart. The 2,000-ton lid, Elena, was blasted off, and the core lay open to the night sky. A column of incandescent material and burning graphite shot a kilometer into the atmosphere, painting the clouds with an eerie glow. In the shattered control room, operators were stunned. Dyatlov insisted it was a hydrogen tank, a denial that set the tone for the initial response. First reports sent to Moscow spoke of a fire and an accident, never that the core had been destroyed. Within minutes the first alarms rang. Plant and city firefighters raced toward the scene. They saw flames leaping from the roof and assumed a normal electrical fire. They were dispatched with standard equipment. They had no dosimeters, no hazmat suits, canvas uniforms and simple helmets. They drove headlong into a lethally radioactive environment. On the roof their boots crunched on graphite and fuel fragments. The air was a toxic cloud of radioactive particles. Within minutes they tasted metal, faces flushed crimson, uncontrollable vomiting seized them. The poison took hold. Still, they fought, hauling hoses, dousing burning tar and smoldering roofs, determined to stop the blaze from reaching Reactor 3. By dawn, the main fires were extinguished. The cost was horrific. Roof crews had absorbed fatal doses, and would soon be hailed as dying heroes. Their bodies were so radioactive they endangered others. They were the first human casualties, sent on a suicide mission by a system that failed to warn them. Their sacrifice slowed an immediate catastrophe, but it was only the beginning of the human toll. As firefighters battled the inferno, 49,000 residents of Pripyat slept, oblivious. A strange fine dust settled. Curious crowds gathered on a railway bridge to watch the shimmering colors of the fire, unaware they stood downwind of a deadly plume. Officials offered no information. Rumors circulated, a fire, an accident, while local leaders waited for orders from Moscow. April 26th dawned with unsettling normality. Children went to school, workers to markets. Shoppers filled the local stalls. A metallic taste drifted in the air. Police washed streets with a white foam. People whispered rumors, but no clear warnings were given. By April 28, workers in Forsmark, Sweden detected radioactive particles on their shoes. Isotope analysis traced the source back to the Soviet Union. Moscow remained silent until incontrovertible proof forced a grudging admission, a terse, understated announcement on Vremya. Pripyat's people stayed in the dark, breathing poisoned air on contaminated land. It was not until midday on Sunday, April 27, 36 hours after the explosion, that the decision to evacuate Pripyat was finally made. A scientific commission from Moscow arrived, faced with horrifyingly high radiation readings through the city. A calm radio voice announced a temporary evacuation of about 3 days, instructing residents to take only essential documents and a change of clothes. At 2 o'clock, over 1,000 buses lined up. Families boarded in an orderly, surreal procession, believing they would be home in days. They left behind furniture, pets, photographs, the very fabric of their lives, convinced the evacuation was temporary. As the convoy pulled away, Pripyat became a silent, empty city, a ghost town where dogs chased departing buses, howling in confusion. Soon, the zone of alienation, a 30-kilometer radius, was declared. Evacuees became radiological refugees, often met with fear and suspicion. They lost homes, jobs, communities, and health. The psychological trauma of being torn from their lives with no chance to say goodbye would haunt them for years. Pripyat became a monument to the disaster, frozen in time at the moment of its death. With the core still burning, the Soviet Union mobilized a cleanup of unprecedented scale, a war against an invisible enemy. Soldiers, engineers, miners, scientists, conscripted civilians. They became a hastily assembled army, the Liquidators. They removed contaminated soil, felled radioactive forests, and built plans for a sarcophagus to entomb Reactor 4. Miners from Donbass dug tunnels beneath the foundation to prevent molten corium from reaching groundwater, a feared catastrophe for millions. Remote robots failed in the radiation. The job fell to men who worked seconds at a time on the roof, clad in lead aprons, shoveling graphite and running back. In 206 days under extreme hazard, they erected the shelter object, the sarcophagus, to contain hundreds of tons of radioactive debris. Many liquidators would pay with their health, cancers, cataracts, and lifelong illnesses, their faces remembered in memorials. Chernobyl was not just local, it was planetary. The explosion and fire released a plume of radioactive isotopes into the atmosphere. Iodine-131, cesium-137, strontium-90. Winds carried these isotopes across Ukraine, Belarus, Russia, and Northern Europe. Cesium-137 settled into soils entering the food chain. Sheep in Wales, reindeer in Lapland, years later, were found with dangerous radioactivity from Chernobyl. Beyond immediate deaths, the long-term health toll has been immense and debated. The clearest effect, a spike in childhood thyroid cancer in contaminated regions. Estimates range from several thousand to tens of thousands of premature deaths from cancers and radiation-related illnesses. The exact toll remains contested. Strangely, with humans gone, wildlife has resurged. Wolves, boar, deer, even Przewalski's horses roam the exclusion zone. But this is not pristine. Radioactivity remains in soil, plants, and animals. The disaster also left deep psychological scars. Evacuees branded Chernobyltsy, stigma, chronic stress, and generational trauma. The Chernobyl disaster served as a brutal lesson in the catastrophic potential of human error and technological arrogance. It exposed fatal flaws in the RBMK design and in a political culture built on secrecy where safety was secondary to production. Wasted hours and official denial turned an accident into a global catastrophe. Precious time that could have protected millions was lost. Chernobyl forced a global reckoning. International cooperation, transparency, strengthened safety cultures, and better reactor designs. The original sarcophagus crumbled. In 2016, the new Safe Confinement, a colossal steel arch, was slid over the old structure to secure the site for the next century. Today, the Exclusion Zone is an unlikely tourist destination. Visitors witness haunting beauty and pause at memorials that remember the dead and the harmed. It remains a poisoned paradise, a living laboratory, and a permanent testament to what happens when truth and safety fail. The silent streets, the invisible poison, and the memorials are a warning. The story of Chernobyl is not merely history, it is a lesson for the future. A cautionary tale etched in isotopes that will speak to humanity for thousands of years.